So today I am out here in Wheaton, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And I came out here because I thought it would be nice to retrace the steps of our beloved John Belushi and the town that he grew up in. Now, earlier this year, I had the privilege of visiting his final resting place on Martha's Vineyard. But rather than just doing a video about that, which was very sad and somber for me, I thought it would be nice next time I'm in the Chicago area to go to Wheaton and retrace his steps and make a whole video about where he grew up, where he lived, and where he was laid to rest. The home that he grew up in is on Elm Street in Wheaton, Illinois. Now, he was actually born January 24th, 1949 in Chicago to an Albanian American family, Adam and Agnes. And they lived in the Humboldt Park area of Chicago until he was 6 years old. He was the eldest, and at the age of 6, the parents decided to move the family out here to the Chicago suburb of Wheaton, Illinois. So I'm standing right in front of the house that John and Jim would have grown up in, where they would have spent their formative years. Actually, this is where John, Jim, their brother Billy, and their sister Marion would have grown up in. So I'm going to show you the house. It has changed quite a bit. At the time they lived here, it was actually a one-story house. It was white. It was covered in siding. I'll insert a photo of that here. And then it was eventually remodeled and turned into a two-story. They needed more bedrooms. They needed more space. And now it's covered, at least the front of it's covered in red brick. The side is still a white siding. So I'm going to turn the camera around and give you a look at the childhood home of John Belushi and Jim Belushi. So we can kind of get a feel for his whole life, the whole upbringing that he had out here in the Chicago suburbs. So this right here is actually the side of the house, and right there would have been the backyard that John and Jim and his brother and sister probably played behind that fence. As you can see, it's a really beautiful, heavily tree-lined street here, but the house faces Elm Street, so it has an Elm Street address. So we'll go take a look. We'll go around to the front of the house. I do see a car there, and I really don't want to bother anybody, so I'm gonna try to just keep my distance. So this is Elm Street in Wheaton, Illinois. Very charming. I love the trees. It's fall, so everything is the fall colors. It's looking really beautiful. Nice, quiet suburban street out here in Wheaton, a western suburb of Chicago. This is it. And there's a dog in the neighborhood that maybe isn't too happy I'm here. The childhood home of John Belushi and Jim Belushi. It's beautiful, red brick. Now you have to imagine at the time he lived here, it was just one story, so that second story didn't exist. And it was all white siding, kind of like you saw on the side of the house. And then it was expanded. They added the second floor and changed the exterior. But I mean, this is the street that John would have, ridden his bike on his way to school, or a job maybe, or the library, or wherever he was going as he was being raised. Obviously the sidewalks are the same. The front walkway to the home is the same. It's just it's been expanded by adding a second floor, and the exterior has changed. I wanted to take a moment to point out the house across the street. This is going to further substantiate the fact that this is the home where John grew up, because in the 2020 documentary Belushi, there are some scenes of a young John mowing the lawn. And in those clips, you can actually see that same house across the street. It still exists, and it is unchanged. You can also make out that intersection and the front walkway to the house. So yep, this is definitely it, the childhood home of our beloved John Belushi. It was within those walls where he would crack jokes at the dinner table to make his family laugh, because even as a young boy, he loved to make people laugh. As he got a little older, he would play comedy albums, and he would imitate in front of the mirror what he was hearing on the album. And he began writing comedy skits. Even from a young age, he was destined for greatness. All right, so we are leaving the former Belushi home, and we are headed over to the elementary school that John would have went to. It's literally like 2.5 blocks over. He could have walked to school. He probably did back in that day. It's a 8-minute walk according to my GPS. So we're gonna go take a look at his elementary school that he would have gone to in those very, very early years. Now, I never, even though I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, I never had the good fortune to go to Second City in Chicago. So my introduction to John would have been on Saturday Night Live. And wow, he was a powerhouse. I was just blown away. I was very young, but still I was just blown away. And the fact that he was a local boy from a town that was just maybe a half hour away from where I grew up, that just made him very, very special to me. I think I see the school, so let me turn the camera around. All right, so this is it. This is Lincoln Elementary School in Wheaton on Dawes Avenue. And as I said, it's about 2.5 blocks away from the house. An 8-minute walk and a shorter bike ride if he rode his bike. I don't know. So the family would have moved to Wheaton when he was 6. I would guess he went to kindergarten in Chicago if he was 6 years old by the time they got here. So this is where he would have attended, you know, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, all those elementary grades right here at Lincoln Elementary. It's kind of, I don't know. I love that man's talent, and I just loved him so much. So it's really, I'm just glad I have the opportunity to kind of do this and kind of retrace his steps, and all in a way to show love and appreciation as an homage to him. So let me turn the camera around and give you a good look. So this is the front of the school. You can see the sign there, Lincoln Elementary. There's a playground. I just saw a family playing here a little while ago with their children, obviously. And then it goes way, way back. So I don't know if this is, I don't think this is the front entrance. I think the front entrance is actually down there on the side. So we'll go down there. But this is the street you would come down, and you go down to the house that the street that his house is in, pardon me, and you make a left. So it's just a couple streets over, not very far at all. To my right, there is a sign, Lincoln School, have a great day. This is actually the way out. This is the exit out of the parking lot here. It's a one-way. So the parking lot is all the way back here. And you can see the school goes quite a ways back. Today is a Sunday. I purposely came here on a Sunday when obviously there wouldn't be any class in session. I didn't want to film children. Just wanted to give you a look at John's elementary school. And just over here where the flagpole is, that seems to be the entrance to the school. We'll get a little closer. All right, so that would appear to be the entrance where he would have gone into and out of his school. There's a little sign over there that says the school was established in 1956. So if he came here, it would have been in 1956 that he would have started attending this school. It's really nice. And then there's more playground equipment in the back. I'm used to these days schools just being locked down a lot tighter than this, and you can't really walk on school grounds. There's usually fences and gates, and everything is locked down pretty tight. But I guess they're allowing this to be a playground for the children in the community. And it closes at dusk according to that sign, even though it's on school property. So that's going to do it for Lincoln Elementary, where John began getting his education that obviously served him well, considering how well he did for himself in later years. Next, we're going to go take a look at where he attended high school. However, that high school no longer exists. Wait till you see what they put in its place. Alright, so this one's a little sad because, as I mentioned, the high school that John Belushi attended no longer stands. I'll turn the camera around and show you what it is now, but I'm standing on the grounds of the former Wheaton Central High School. It was the central high school for the entire district until 1992. And at 1992, the Wheaton Central High School shut down, and the students, teachers, everything moved over to the Wheaton Warrenville High School, which had closed in 1983 due to low enrollment. So they moved everything over to that school in 1992, and then they changed its name to Wheaton Warrenville South, which still stands today, and we can go over and take a look at it. But that's not where John went to high school. Where John went to high school was right on the ground that I'm standing in, which in a minute you'll see is now a grocery store. So this is it, this Mariano's grocery store. People are probably wondering why a girl is filming at a grocery store. Where this building is, that is where Wheaton Central High School stood. It was built in 1925. I'll try to find some photos online and insert them. This parking lot actually wasn't even here. The high school had a circular driveway where the parents would drop off the students, and all of this was this massive front lawn, beautiful green grass. So basically this grocery store now occupies the entire footprint of the former Wheaton Central High School. So I know it's not the school, but it's the same land, kind of the same footprint, like I said. So you can kind of still imagine John coming to this property. Also wanted to mention the school mascot was a tiger. So inside, all of the decor was orange and black in honor of that tiger mascot. So this is where John Belushi would have attended high school, and also where Jim Belushi would have attended high school, and also Bob Woodward. This was also his high school location prior to it being a grocery store, of course. So while John started playing football in high school, it wasn't long until he found his true love and he got involved in acting. He was involved in the high school skits and plays, and he had that animal magnetism where whatever he said, hey guys, let's do this, people would do it. He even put together a band and everybody would come and listen. He did not like to bring people to his home because he was a little bit ashamed of his Armenian ancestry, and what he really wanted to do was be an American. He knew he did not want to be a restaurateur like his father, so when he found comedy and acting and the crowds and the friendship that it would bring and the laughter, he knew that was it. He knew that that would allow him to go somewhere. Now, of course, no John Belushi tribute video would be complete without mentioning the love of his life, Judith Jacqueline. They met at Wheaton Central High School in 1966 when she was a sophomore and he was a senior, and their first date was the homecoming dance. John and Judy married on New Year's Eve, 1976. Through the years that followed, Judith stood by his side when he went off for summer stock, when he went to Chicago and got involved in Second City, when he went to New York. Through all the trials and tribulations, all of the problems that John faced later in life, Judy was there by his side. After John's passing, Judy worked very hard to keep his memory alive and to keep blues music going as well, in tribute to the Blues Brothers. Tragically, we lost her in 2024, so John and Judy hopefully are happily reunited in heaven. There's a beautiful park down here. I don't know if this was here back when he attended. He did graduate, like I said, in 1967. It is really pretty. Now, over to the right, and I'm going to go take a closer look at it, there is a sports complex. So I'm wondering, I don't know, I did try to look it up online, I could not find anything, but I'm wondering if that sports complex was actually part of the school at the time. And although they tore down the school, you know, maybe they left the sports complex. So we'll go take a better look at that. Okay, so just to give you some perspective, there's Mariano's. That's where the high school would have been. The building ends and then starts another building right over here, which looks older. Looks like the type of brick they built schools out of back then. And, you know, down here is all of this sports. All of these different sports that can be played here. So everybody knows that John played football in high school, and I'm thinking maybe this is where the football field was at that time. You know, it makes sense that they tore down this school, and then maybe this was another part of it, and they left it. Because we know that this was just grass with a circular driveway, so there's no way this was the football field. And it couldn't be behind the school, because behind the school is a very busy road. There's no room for a football field back there. So that's why I'm thinking this would have been the school's football field at the time. Okay, so after a little bit more internet sleuthing, I can confirm that my hunch was correct. The athletic complex that you see, it actually was part of the Wheaton Central High School, which was originally called Hubble School when it was first constructed. So yes, those are the athletic fields that were there at the time John went to the school. Looks like they did some improvements to it. And yeah, they tore down the school, but they left that part of the complex remaining, and the city turned it into an athletic complex. So yay, I can confirm it, and now we can visualize John playing football on that property. Well, while I'm already out here in Wheaton, the completionist in me just can't leave without making a quick stop at the nearby Wheaton Warrenville South High School to film a little bit for this video. Now, as I mentioned before, Wheaton Warrenville South is not where John Belushi attended high school. In fact, the building that today occupies Wheaton Warrenville South, it wasn't even built until 1973, which was 6 years after John had graduated from the former Wheaton Central in 1967. The school today, known as Wheaton Warrenville South, it was built to serve students from Warrenville and the south side of Wheaton. However, it opened at an unfortunate time when Wheaton's student population was declining, and it soon became evident that there was no need for it. So the Board of Education decided to close the newly built, what was known at the time as Wheaton Warrenville High School, in 1983. The building sat vacant until 1992, when the aging Wheaton Central was closed and moved into this building, which had been vacated by the Wheaton Warrenville, and that is when they changed the name to Wheaton Warrenville South. So while John didn't go here, he was out of here by 1967, long before Wheaton Central moved here. Again, I just wanted to take a moment to make a quick drive-by and give you a look. As you can see, although the school moved, they kept the tiger mascot, and here they have the Tiger Trail of Champions, which is kind of nice to see. Now, even though John did not attend this school, since he did go to Wheaton Central, which ultimately moved here, I'm told they do have a photo of him inside as a tribute, but of course it's pretty difficult to get inside a school these days, especially on a weekend. So, but they do have a little nod to him here, so that's kind of nice to know. Okay, so the next stop on this journey today brings us to Elmwood Cemetery. I almost said Elwood. Talk about a Freudian slip. Elmwood Cemetery in River Grove, Illinois. This is where John Belushi's parents were laid to rest. But this is also where some believe John Belushi himself is laid to rest, and he is not. But in a minute, I'll show you why that is so easy for some people to believe. So I'll turn the camera around. So if you ever wanted to come here to pay your respects, you're going to be looking for this sign, section 7, and you're going to actually see right here there's a Belushi grave site, but the one we want is actually the one right next to it. This is other members of the Belushi family, but what we're looking for, we're going to find right over there. Let's go closer. Mother Laszlo, 1893 to 1980, and Father Anastasia, 1881 to 1949, other members of the Belushi family. And here is where John Belushi's parents were laid to rest. And you can see down here it says Father Adam, January 2nd, 1918 to May 30th, 1996. Mother Agnes, March 23rd, 1922 to December 21, 1989. But in the middle, and it actually has their photographs, so I'm going to zoom in on that in a minute. But in the middle, it says, in loving memory of our son, 1949 to 1982, John A. Belushi. He gave us laughter. And right in the center is a photo of John. So that is really more of a memorial for John. John is not buried here. He is buried in Martha's Vineyard, and you're going to see that at the end of this video. But this is where his parents are laid to rest. Here's a photo of his father, Adam, and his mother. Sort of disturbing. I noticed that the headstone has some pretty big chunks missing over here, and over here, and over here, and here. None of the other headstones around here have chunks missing from them like that. So it kind of concerns me that that is perhaps fans trying to take a little piece home with them. And this is exactly why they he was laid to rest in Martha's Vineyard, and he was moved so that he wasn't in a spot where fans could get to. I guess it was creating some issues, but I'll talk about that more a little bit later on. For now, this is just the gravesite of John Belushi's parents and memorial for John himself. And there's another thing here I find a little disturbing. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, but there's all of these white caps. First I was thinking drug paraphernalia of some kind. I don't know. And then I pulled up, there's these little blue stickers all over. And I don't know if you can see it, but it says sterile needle. So I don't know what to make of this. I am not knowledgeable on the topic of drugs. I don't know if people are coming here and doing drugs at John's site, or where they think John is, because again, he's not buried here. So I just don't know what to make of this. They're everywhere, and I don't even want to touch them. And what is this thing? Nothing really, but none of the other graves have that. None of them. That kind of breaks my heart. So I don't know. That seems to be what that is to me, but I just don't know. Or someone's just leaving that there for some reason. I don't even know. I'm sorry. I sound like an idiot right now. I'm very disturbed to see that at Mr. and Mrs. Belushi's gravesite. So I'm just going to take a moment to pay my respects to Mr. and Mrs. Belushi. Without their son, I mean, as the memorial says, he gave us laughter. So I really thank them, appreciate them for bringing John into the world and sharing him with us. All right, our next next stop on the John Belushi tour is this restaurant, the Seven Dwarfs. This is where John worked when he was a young boy, a young teen. It's also here in Wheaton, not very far from his house. It's on a very busy street, Roosevelt Road actually. So I'm gonna go inside, have some breakfast, and see what I can find out about those days when John Belushi worked at the Seven Dwarfs. Come along. All right, so here is the Seven Dwarfs menu. Breakfast menu. It's going to be one of these menus that has pretty much everything under the sun to choose from. I love these types of cafes. Having grown up in Chicago, this kind of stuff definitely reminds me of home. Eggs Benedict, country eggs, scramblers. Aw, once upon a breakfast. That's so cute. Oatmeal, pretty much everything you could want. So, who knows if it was the same menu back then, but just to give you an idea of the kind of place it is. So being full-blooded Italian, I decided on the Italian omelet that has sausage and green peppers and tomatoes, which comes with a side of pancakes. And I've already taken a few bites, and it's quite good. I found out that John actually washed dishes here when he worked here, and it was actually before the current owner owned the restaurant. So the owner at the time is no longer the owner, but they do have this photo on this fireplace mantle as a little remembrance of him, along with all the Seven Dwarfs and Snow White. Seven Dwarfs are everywhere. There are some pictures back here behind the cash register, next to where the cakes are. And there is an autograph photo of Jim Belushi. This is what the outside sign looks like at night when it's all lit up. Got another one of Jim up there, looks like. So they definitely are paying homage to their history here with John and Jim Belushi. So I really enjoyed my breakfast inside the Seven Dwarfs. It was way too much food. Could not finish even half of it, but it was quite yummy, especially the pancakes. Loved them. I did get an opportunity to speak with the owner, Sam. Now, he purchased this place when he was 20 years old in 1978, so it was long after John Belushi and Jim Belushi had worked here. But he did confirm that John worked here washing dishes and Jim worked here as a waiter, and he also shared with me that they were both constantly pulling pranks, so much so that they actually both got fired. That was something I did not know. He also said that Mrs. Belushi, John's mom, John and Jim's mom, actually worked just down the street a little bit, and so she would frequently come in here for lunch. And, you know, years later, he purchased it in 1978. John and Jim were long gone. The current owner is Armenian, and of course, they were Armenian. So they got to talking, and that's when Jim Belushi came in years later to meet with the owner. There's some autograph photos of him hanging on the wall. So, yeah, definitely a lot of Belushi history at Seven Dwarfs. It's on Roosevelt Road in Wheaton. They're open from about 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Your typical, you know, nice neighborhood cafe. So I really enjoyed my visit. So that's going to just about do it from the Seven Dwarfs. After graduating from Wheaton Central High School in 1967, John took his first steps into the world of performing by spending the entire summer in rural Bloomfield, Indiana. It was there he participated in summer stock productions at the Shawnee Theater. He performed in a variety of roles each of which earned him rave reviews, which lit a comedic fire within. After spending the summer in Bloomfield, Indiana, John returned home to Wheaton and attended the College of DuPage. It was here, at the College of DuPage, where John was awarded his associate degree in 1970. But by then, he had already found his calling as a comic. Now, as a side note, he also attended the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater for a year, and that time is said to have been the inspiration for the Animal House scene of a motorcycle driving upstairs. It was while John attended the College of DuPage that he started his own comedy troupe known as the West Compass Trio. Their success piqued the interest of Bernard Salins, the founder of Second City. He would later give John his big break by asking him to join the Second City cast in 1971 after John graduated from the College of DuPage. But more on that later. Here on the grounds of the College of DuPage campus, you will find the MAC, inside which there is a performance hall that is dedicated to John and Jim Belushi, who also attended the College of DuPage and graduated with an associate degree in 1974. So I definitely wanted to head over here and see if I couldn't get inside and take a look at it. The MAC first opened its doors in October of 1986, but after a $35 million renovation in 2013, there was a grand opening celebration during which this dedication was made. So here it is, Belushi Performance Hall. There are entrances to the hall in several locations in the building on both the first and second floor. So just like any theater, you would enter through the door closest to your seat. So here is how it went. It was March 8th, 2014, following a performance by Jim Belushi during those grand opening events of that renovated MAC, when it was announced that the theater was renamed Belushi Performance Hall in memory of John Belushi and in recognition of Jim Belushi's many achievements. That was due in part to the fact that in 1983, in association with the Second City, Jim had created the John Belushi Scholarship Fund to honor the name and memory of his brother and fellow COD alum. This scholarship provides recipients with full tuition and fees at the College of DuPage and is available to acting and technical theater students as well as music students. Since its inception, more than $120,000 in scholarships have gone to fund the dreams of students, and more than $330,000 has been donated or raised by Jim Belushi over the years in memory of his brother John for student scholarships and performing arts programs. Now, some think this hall was only dedicated for Jim, but that is simply not true. It was named to honor both John and Jim, who both attended the College of DuPage and both left their mark. There's actually a video on YouTube of that evening, and it shows Jim being presented with a plaque that night and being totally surprised by the announcement. And so that is why some people think it was named only for Jim. But the only reason Jim was the only one being presented with a plaque that night, well, that's just due to the sad fact that John is no longer here.
What we have for Jim tonight, on the basis of my recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and with the unanimous support of the Foundation, March 2 weeks out, the Board of Trustees will formally dedicate the new Performance Hall to the Belushis, John and Jim Belushi.
After graduating from college, John's next stop was Chicago's famed Second City. He had first visited the comedy club when he returned home from summer stock, and he was instantly hooked. He immediately knew that this is what he wanted to do with his life. He was driven to succeed, and Judith agreed to support him in his endeavors. Now, as I mentioned before, word had spread about John's West Compass Trio and caught the eye of the owner of Second City during John's college years. As a result, John auditioned, and not only was he hired, but he was immediately put on the main stage. It was the first time somebody that was not in the Second City touring company was put on the main stage. He was that impressive. It was here at Second City that John truly excelled, captivating audiences with his dynamic impressions and his over-the-top performances of celebrated figures like Marlon Brando and Joe Cocker, solidifying his reputation as a comedic force to be reckoned with. At Second City, John continued to be the life of the party, just as he had been in his school days. After Second City, John's career trajectory took a considerable upturn. After Second City, John was offered a role with Chevy Chase and Christopher Guest in an off-Broadway production of National Lampoon Lemmings, which was a parody of Woodstock in 1972, and he and Judy moved to New York. Soon after, John began working as writer, director, and actor for the National Lampoon Radio Hour, a comedy show created by the staff from National Lampoon magazine. There he met fellow cast members Harold Ramis, Joe Flaherty, Brian Doyle Murray, his brother Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, and Richard Belzer. During a 1974 trip to Toronto, John met Dan Aykroyd, and a lifelong bond was instantly formed. In 1975, Chevy Chase and writer Michael O'Donoghue recommended John to Lorne Michaels for the show Michaels was about to produce for NBC called Saturday Night, later changed to Saturday Night Live. Michaels wasn't sure at first, but he changed his mind as soon as John auditioned for him. Over his 4 years at Saturday Night Live, John developed a string of successful characters and catchphrases. Who can ever forget, "But no!" Together with Aykroyd, Belushi created Jake and Elwood, the Blues Brothers, which took on a life of its own and led to Blues Brothers movies, records, and concerts. In Rolling Stone's February 2015 appraisal of all 141 Saturday Night Live cast members, John Belushi received their top ranking. They were quoted as saying Belushi was the live in Saturday Night Live. They wrote, "The one who made the show happen on the edge. Nobody embodied the highs and lows of Saturday Night Live like John Belushi." After Saturday Night Live, John went on to star in a string of movies. No one can ever forget his portrayal of John Bluto Blutarski in 1978's Animal House, where John absolutely stole the show. His lines were purposely kept to a minimum so his facial expressions that he was so famous for could shine through. That same year, he played Deputy Hector in the Western comedy Goin' South, alongside Jack Nicholson, Christopher Lloyd, Danny DeVito, Mary Steenburgen, Veronica Cartwright, and Ed Begley Jr. In 1979, he went on to play Eric Katz in the drama Old Boyfriends, starring Talia Shire. And that same year, he played Captain Bill, Wild Bill Kelso in Steven Spielberg's war comedy film titled 1941, alongside his best friend Dan Aykroyd. This film was nominated for Best Cinematography, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects at the 1980 Academy Awards. In 1980, both John and Dan took the world by storm as Joliet Jake and Elwood Blues in The Blues Brothers. The Blues Brothers act first debuted on Saturday Night Live, and it sprang from Belushi and Aykroyd's love of music. The movie became a celebration of blues music featuring legends like Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, who each had their moments to shine alongside the chaotic antics of our beloved Belushi and Aykroyd. The Blues Brothers phenomenon is alive and thriving today, with cosplayers dressing up like them all the time at fan conventions and blues conventions even being held at the Joliet prison where the opening scene of the movie was filmed. The following year, in 1981, John played Chicago reporter Ernie Suchak in the film Continental Divide, which was a romantic comedy starring John and Blair Brown. And that same year, he made what would sadly become his final film performance as Earl Keese in the black comedy Neighbors, also alongside his very best friend, Dan Aykroyd. Now, of course, as we all know, along the way, John developed a drug habit that would take him from us far too soon. He actually was able to quit that habit during the production of Continental Divide, but he had a severe relapse under the stress of making his final film, Neighbors. And sadly, that will bring us to the most tragic chapter in this story. On March 5th, 1982, John Belushi was found deceased inside bungalow number 3 at Hollywood's exclusive Chateau Marmont. His death was ruled an accidental overdose due to a combination of cocaine and heroin, a phenomenon known in the drug circles as a speedball. On the evening before he died, he visited some of his favorite places on the Sunset Strip. One of those places was the Rainbow Grill. Here, he sat in the kitchen and he ate what would ultimately be his last meal, a bowl of lentil soup. Later, the coroner would say that lentil soup was the only food he had in his system. In the months leading to his tragic death, John was depressed over the state of his career, and he sought solace in drugs. Accustomed to having hit movies, when his last two films did not do very well at the box office, he really struggled. So he decided to write a movie for himself, one that would break him out of his Animal House typecasting and redefine the next few years of his career. He headed to LA in January 1982 to begin writing this film that was to be a romantic comedy titled Noble Rot. He was determined to create a hit. He checked into the Chateau Marmont Hotel, and after changing rooms a few times, he eventually moved into bungalow number 3 on the evening of February 28, 1982. He continued to work on his script, but being deep in the throes of his addiction at the time, it appears he spent a good amount of time during those final days with drug dealers or indulging in his habit. In light of all this, John's work on the script was not going well, and neither his manager nor Paramount executives were happy with the results. Having run out of patience, the studio was willing to cut its losses and start over. They pitched John on a whole new idea, offering him a role that would require him wearing a diaper in one scene. John was very unhappy with the project, and he turned it down several times, but eventually he gave in and accepted the part. But unfortunately, his heart wasn't in it. Depression set in over this and sent him into the days-long bender that ended in tragedy. Dan Aykroyd had told him to just hold on. He was writing something that would turn everything around, the project that would later become known as Ghostbusters. Dan had intended for John to play the role of Dr. Peter Venkman. Needless to say, John could not hold on, and Noble Rot was never finished. After John's death, the role of Peter Venkman went to fellow SNL player Bill Murray, and Dan Aykroyd made Slimer in John's likeness instead. Robert De Niro and Robin Williams were the last two friends of John to see him alive, having visited him in the early morning hours of March 5th. Both were disturbed by the scene they found in John's bungalow, and they did not stay long. The place was said to be in a shambles, and neither one of them liked the look of the woman who was lounging around the bungalow. De Niro would be the last to leave sometime after 3 a.m. That woman would turn out to be Kathy Smith, a Canadian backup singer, groupie, and drug dealer who first met John on the set of Saturday Night Live in 1976 and became one of his dealers. She would become responsible for administering the fatal speedball to John that claimed his life. At 8 a.m., Kathy signed for the room service that was delivered to the bungalow, ate her breakfast, cleaned up the drug paraphernalia, checked in on John, who was in bed, and left. His last words to her were, "Don't leave me alone." But Kathy did not honor those final wishes. She did, in fact, leave him alone, and sometime after that, and before noon, John Belushi passed away in his sleep inside bungalow number 3 due to what the coroner would later determine to be acute heroin and cocaine poisoning due to the speedball administered by Kathy Smith. Kathy Smith was eventually charged and pled no contest to involuntary manslaughter and 3 counts of furnishing and administering controlled substances to Belushi in his final hours. Kathy Smith was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but served only 15 months. Ironically, John had starred alone in a black and white movie for Saturday Night Live in 1975 in a sketch titled Don't Look Back in Anger. In this sketch, he played himself as an old man visiting the graves of the other original SNL cast members, himself being the last survivor. In an odd twist of fate, John Belushi was sadly the first of the cast to pass away. This is the last known photograph taken of Mr. Belushi alive. This was on January 28, 1982, when he attended the wedding reception of Danny DeVito and Rita Perlman. It has been said that this door is the entrance to bungalow number 3 at Chateau Marmont, but it is not. It is actually the entrance to the home of Danny DeVito and his bride. There's a similar photo of Jack Nicholson standing in front of the same door, having attended the same event. All right, this next spot I'm going to show you is a little bit more somber. This is where things take a sad turn. So everybody knows that John Belushi fell in love with Martha's Vineyard, and he actually moved here, purchased a home, him and his wife, Judy. It was the one place he said he felt that he could find peace, you know. Had a beautiful home on Lucy Vincent Beach, which is a private beach. You really can't go there unless you're a resident of Martha's Vineyard. So this was his happy place. This was his happy place. John Belushi wanted it all, and it was all too much, and it ended in tragedy. Since he loved Martha's Vineyard so much, he said that when he did pass away, he wanted to be buried here. So I'm about to show you the church. There's a lot of cars. I'm about to show you the church where John Belushi's funeral was held. This is that church. It is the First Congregational Church of West Tisbury. It's not too far from where he and his wife Judy resided. 4 days after his death on March 5th, his body was flown from Los Angeles to Martha's Vineyard. He was going to be buried later in the day in Abel's Hill Cemetery, which I will be taking you to as well. That cemetery is about a half mile from his summer home on a beautiful 8-acre estate overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. On March 9th, 1982, private funeral services were held for him right here. Before the funeral, there was a private wake for family members only. About 15 were in attendance, and that was held inside this church. These ceremonies were by invitation only. They were closed to the media. Trying to refer back to my notes so I don't forget anything important. So of course his sidekick Dan Aykroyd was here. We all know that. He rode a Harley motorcycle on that day, and he helped carry the casket in and out of the church. Other people that were invited were actor Treat Williams, James Taylor, who actually lives on Martha's Vineyard, of course his SNL former producer Lorne Michaels, actress Catherine Walker, who co-starred with John in his last movie, The Neighbors. She was invited as well. There were 5 uniformed state policemen who kept the reporters and the curious away as a long black limousine pulled up to this beautiful 2-story funeral home. And John's weeping mother was helped up the stairs, those stairs right there, inside the church for the funeral of her son. A funeral spokesman said John's body was clad in a dark suit, and he had a half-opened casket inside this church. Of course, Dan Aykroyd was in attendance, wearing a red, white, and blue bandana around his head and a brown leather flight jacket with a carnation. He helped carry Belushi's casket up this path and into the church where the ceremonies were held. They were Armenian Orthodox church ceremonies. John's 2 brothers, Jim and Billy, they also acted as pallbearers and helped carry the casket up this red brick path that you see here. The funeral procession was preceded by 2 Armenian Orthodox priests in traditional gold and purple vestments who swung incense burners in the cold sea wind. If you look online, you could actually find photographs of that procession taking place on this brick pathway. You will also see that although the police were doing a great job of keeping looky-loos away, there was a crowd of people standing off to the side and watching the events unfold. The hearse carrying John's body would have pulled up right here, right in front of the church. And there are some photos I've seen of Dan Aykroyd looking at the hearse very sadly, of course. And that would have happened right here. About the only somewhat humorous thing that occurred here that day was Bill Murray's eulogy. Bill Murray, of course, was great friends with John Belushi, and he made a film called Razor's Edge. In fact, he supposedly did Ghostbusters so he could make the money to make Razor's Edge. And in Razor's Edge, which apparently did not do very well, there was a eulogy scene in which he eulogized one of the characters in a very not kind of nice way. What he said was not very nice. So he chose to repeat that script from that film and repeat those lines at John's eulogy, for John's eulogy. Obviously, Bill Murray did not mean those words. It was his way of dealing with the tragedy. He later explained why he eulogized his friend John Belushi in that way, stating it comes from an old Persian tradition where if somebody dies, you tell horrible stories about them. So that's what he did. Dan Aykroyd then drove his Harley Davidson to Abel's Hill Cemetery in Chilmark, where John Belushi was laid to rest under a light snowfall. And we're gonna go there next. And I gotta be honest, this one might be a little difficult for me, but I do want to pay my respects. So come along with me as we visit John Belushi's final resting place. Okay, we have arrived at Abel's Hill Cemetery in Chilmark, Massachusetts, just a few miles from the church, not very far away. And behind me on the left, you can see John Belushi's final resting place. Now, the issue of where he is buried has been debated. Some people believe he's buried at Elmwood Cemetery in River Grove, Illinois, where his parents are. And that's because there is a big monument there with John Belushi's name on it. Well, that's really just said to be a memorial marker. And it's been stated that John is, in fact, buried on Martha's Vineyard. Now, truth be told, he's not really in this particular spot because there were too many fans coming and doing things, leaving things, and causing all kinds of ruckus for the cemetery. So his body was actually moved, and probably only Judy Belushi knows where it lies in a secluded, unmarked spot so that fans, couldn't be traipsing all over it. But they moved his headstone and everything over here, just inside the entrance of the cemetery, so people who were fans of John Belushi could come and see this memorial to him and pay their respects without going really deep into the cemetery and disrupting other people that might be here visiting their loved ones. So let's go take a look at John Belushi's gravesite. So at his funeral, the Reverend used one of John's trademark phrases, "Wise up." I think the exact sentiment was, we can hear the call of his solitary warning, "Wise up." And after the funeral, the friends and family gathered in a procession with Dan Aykroyd on his motorcycle, leading right here to this cemetery. Let's go have a look at John Belushi's gravesite. There's actually a nice little rock you can sit on while you pay your respects to one of the greatest talents of all time. Here lies buried the body of John Belushi, born January 24th, 1949. Died March 5th, 1982. I'm kind of laughing at the cute little Ray-Bans somebody has left for him. I think that's kind of cute. I may be gone, but rock and roll lives on. Yeah, you are one that will never be forgotten, Mr. Belushi. I thought I'd be emotional, but maybe not this emotional. I mean, it's been a long time, but it's just such a tragic, sad story. He was just such a great talent. He still had so much work to do, so much to give us. So I mourn for what we lost when we lost him. I mourn for his family, Dan Aykroyd, his business partner. I mourn for all who loved him. And it's very surreal being here. Even if he's not actually right here, he is here. And you can kind of feel it. I can. I did read that James Taylor, who lives on the island, did perform at John's funeral. So that was really a nice touch. And there are photos. If you go online, you can see photos of the mourners over his gravesite. I remember specifically one photo of Bill Murray laying a flower on the casket. Anything on the other side? It's a beautiful little spot that they carved out for him. Has his fence all around it, so he has his own private space. His friends, his family, his fans can come and sit on this bench or on that rock over there and just take some time. I just noticed that the rock has his name on it. Belushi. Well, it's really sad. I'm really sad that John's story ended here. But it is a beautiful island. I can understand why he fell in love with it. I can understand why he wanted to make this his home and why he wanted to make it his final resting place. So I'm just going to take a moment or two or three and just kind of sit here quietly and pay my respects. I hope you enjoyed seeing John Belushi's grave, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.